Cajun French is a major staple of southern Louisiana today. It was brought down through the forced migrations of the Acadians in the Great Deportation. Because of the Great Deportation, many of the French sailed south to Louisiana and ended up in southern Louisiana. Many Cajuns spoke Cajun French up until the 20th century. They would learn the little English they had to in order to get by, but their main language was still French. Due to slavery and other forced migrations, many cultures began to interact with one another in Louisiana. Because of this, their language was changed and altered throughout different parts of the state, but it could still be generally understood because the basis was still French. Still today, as you travel throughout southern Louisiana, the language is generally the same, but words may vary in pronunciation. Some of the biggest changes for the Cajuns occurred between 1912 and 1921. At this time in history, America was becoming more and more progressive and pro-American. This pro-American movement was brought on in large part due to World War I and the communist developments in Russia. It was the beginning of a movement to conform everything to American values. In 1912, Luther Hall was the governor of Louisiana. He was a very progressive pro-American governor. He passed a legislative act that allowed the Department of Education to select the books and curriculum in public schools. Due to this act, the books that were then supplied to schools were taught in English. In 1916, the state approved Act 27 of the Louisiana Constitution. This act required all children to attend public school and for English to be taught as the only language. Many children that attended school at the time went to school not knowing English because their parents only knew French and that was all they were taught. Regardless of this fact, many children were still disciplined because they did not know how to speak English. Among these harsh disciplines are the ones still documented in pictures that can be found today. For example, Vermilionville, nearby Lafayette, has an exhibit of a school from the early 1900s, around the same time as all these events were occurring. In the picture of this school, it is shown that one of the punishments for children that spoke mostly French was to write, "I will not speak French," 100+ times on the board. Also, another punishment was that children were slapped on the hand with a ruler when they spoke French in order to get them to speak English. Although the law was enacted that forced children to attend public schools and learn English, many families in southern Louisiana were not wealthy and were quite large. Due to this, many of the children did not attend school beyond 5th grade and were forced to drop out of school and help around the house with household work. This resulted in another generation not learning to speak English fluently. When the children did not attend school, they had to do other work in order to help their families keep and maintain a living. Many of them were forced out to help in the fields with grains and cotton. A vast majority of people in southern Louisiana also raised animals in order to supply food for their families. The women spent much of their time cooking, cleaning, and quilting to keep their families warm. This resulted in a larger gap of people that were not able to speak English, and those that did spoke very little of it fluently. The children that were able to attend school became bilingual. In order to speak with their families at home, they had to be able to understand and speak the Cajun French, while at school they were forced to speak only English. This began the gap in education that we see today. Today we notice that very few people speak Cajun French, and those that do not speak it as their primary language. In 1921, the Louisiana Constitution was changed so that all proceedings had to be done in English. This means that all prayers and other such activities had to be conducted in English rather than in French. This greatly lends to the dying language that Cajun French is today. Many of the people that grew up going to school during this time did not teach their children French the way it was taught to them. Because of the harsh conditions they went through in school, they did not want the same fate for their children. Around the 1960s, things in Louisiana began to change. The Council for the Development of French in Louisiana was created. They began to fear losing the already dying language that made Louisiana so special. In result, they established this organization in 1968 to help bring French back into the educational system. The French that began to be taught in schools was not the Cajun French native to Louisiana, but it was a step forward. Today, many French immersion programs can be found throughout the state of Louisiana. In 1977, LSU began offering Cajun French courses. Following that, in 1992, Father Jules Daigle wrote a Cajun French dictionary. This greatly shows how Cajun French has evolved throughout the 1900s.